I saw her standing in the kitchen, her hand pressed against the counter like she was holding herself together. The soft hum of the fridge was the only sound. Outside, rain tapped lightly on the window, almost gentle, almost indifferent. And in that moment I realized I didn't know her anymore. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They were fixed on something behind me, something I couldn't see. I wanted to ask her what she was thinking. I wanted to reach across the counter and grab her, pull her close, and make everything right. But I didn't, because a strange, hollow part of me already knew the truth. "You're awake," she said finally. Her voice was calm, almost clinical, not a trace of warmth. Yeah, I whispered, my throat felt raw. "What's going on, Anna?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sighed, a sound that carried more weight than words could. I watched her fingers fidget with a silver ring, not mine, not our wedding band. My stomach twisted. The day had started like any other. I'd kissed her forehead before leaving for work, watched her smile at me in the mirror, soft and tired from the late nights. Our apartment smelled faintly of coffee and vanilla, the scent I loved waking up to. But something in her posture, the way she avoided me, should have been the first warning. I returned early, drawn by an inexplicable unease. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was the silence that had been growing between us for weeks. The apartment was too quiet when I walked in. No music, no laughter, not even the usual clatter of dishes, just her and that look. I leaned against the doorway, heart hammering. "Anna, what is it?" She finally turned and I froze. Her eyes, wide and impossibly sad, carried a secret she couldn't fully contain. Then she said it. "This baby deserves a real father." The words fell like stones in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I felt my knees weaken. What are you talking about?" My voice cracked, brittle, like glass breaking. I can't do it," she whispered. Marcus will adopt her. He'll give her the life she deserves." The room tilted. I had to grip the edge of the counter to stay upright. Marcus, my friend, someone I'd trusted. Someone who had laughed with me, shared beers and secrets, and now he was him. I tried to speak, tried to form a sentence, but nothing came out. My mind spun in slow, impossible circles. How long had this been happening? How many nights had she spent thinking about him instead of me? How many times had she smiled, kissed, pretended? I don't understand," I said finally, my voice a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the fridge. She shook her head. "It's not about understanding, Daniel. It's about doing what's right. I can't give her the father she needs. Marcus, he can, he wants to, and I can't stand in the way." Her words were precise, rehearsed even, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something else. Guilt, maybe. Or fear, I couldn't tell, my vision blurred. The walls of our apartment felt suddenly too close, too confining, as if the room itself were pressing in on me. I backed away, shaking. You can't just decide this. You can't just," my voice failed me again. I sank onto the couch, hands trembling as the realization hit fully. She was leaving, not just leaving me, but leaving us, our life, our future. The silence stretched, thick, heavy. Broken only by the sound of the rain, tapping insistently against the window. I wanted to scream, I wanted to beg, I wanted to hit something, throw something, anything. But I sat frozen, hollowed out, feeling the slow, cruel unraveling of everything I had believed in. She knelt beside me then, her hand brushing mine, tentative, almost apologetic. I never wanted it to hurt this much," she said softly, and I realized it didn't matter. Nothing she said could reach me now, not apologies. Not explanations, not the soft brush of her hand against mine. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. I stayed silent, letting her words wash over me. I wanted to hate her, to curse her, to throw the apartment into chaos. But all I felt was emptiness, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, I'll stay in the apartment until the end of the month. I thought maybe we could talk one last time. About everything." I nodded numbly. My heart felt like it had been carved out. And in the dim light of our living room, watching her stare at the rain-streaked window, I realized the life I had known was gone. Gone. And I didn't know how to breathe without her. I closed my eyes, trying to will away the pounding in my chest, trying to imagine a life after this. But the thought was unbearable. The idea of Marcus smiling down at our child, holding her, loving her in a way I couldn't, it was a blade twisting deeper. I opened my eyes just in time to see her leave the kitchen, moving down the hall. She paused at the bedroom door. "Daniel," she said, voice low, almost a whisper, I love you, but not like that, not enough." And then she disappeared inside, leaving me alone. Alone with the echo of her declaration. Alone with the scent of her perfume fading in the air. Alone with the truth. I sat there for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain, the hum of the fridge, the soft, heartbreaking sound of life continuing, even as mine felt like it had stopped. And then when the world felt like it would never move again, I heard it. A faint vibration on the coffee table. My phone, a message from Marcus. It read, "We need to talk, about her, about everything." I stared at it, my chest tightening. And for the first time that day, the fear I had been trying to ignore rose in a cold, unstoppable wave. Because I knew this wasn't just a conversation. It was the beginning of the end. The apartment felt like a mausoleum. Every corner, every shadow, every familiar object whispered her absence. I walked through rooms as if I were already a ghost, touching the backs of chairs, the edges of tables, anything to remind myself it had all been real. But it wasn't, not anymore. Night fell too quickly. I lay awake on the couch, the rain drumming against the window like some cruel metronome. My phone rested on the coffee table, silent except for the faint glow of unread messages. I didn't want to see them, I didn't want to hear from anyone. Friends' voices sounded distant, their concern polite but meaningless. I kept expecting her to come back into the room, to laugh like she used to, the sound bouncing off the walls, filling the empty spaces. But the laughter never came, only the hum of the fridge, only the quiet ache of absence. Marcus's name kept appearing in my thoughts, unbidden and sharp. I saw him in every shadow that flickered across the wall. I imagined him holding her, smiling down at her belly, whispering things I couldn't. I imagined him being what I could never be, and the image made something inside me fracture. It started with small things. A text I stumbled across on the counter. Marcus had sent her a photo of a stroller, its soft beige fabric shining under sunlight. Another message, a simple, affectionate, can't wait to meet her. The words were small, benign, but they felt like blows to my chest. I tried to escape it, walks in the park, late-night drives. I would sit in the car, engine humming, rain streaming down the windshield, thinking about what I had lost, thinking about the life I had imagined for us, thinking about her. She didn't contact me for days, not a word, not a call, not a note, and that silence became louder than any argument we had ever had. It shouted betrayal, it screamed absence. It demanded acknowledgement that the life I thought I knew had been stolen. And then came the sightings, small, almost cruel. A mutual friend mentioned she'd been out with Marcus, laughing, radiant, hands brushing over her stomach. Another time I saw her across the street from a cafe, arm in arm with him, the sunlight catching in her hair, making it look golden, alive. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run to her, scream at her, ask her why, but I couldn't. I was too shattered, too hollow to face her happiness without crumbling. I became obsessed with small details, the scent of her perfume lingering in the apartment, the way her coffee mug sat untouched in the sink. The faint outline of her hair on the pillow, every trace a reminder, every trace a silent accusation. Sleep was a stranger. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, heart hammering, imagining conversations I would never have. Imagining confessions, apologies, explanations that would never come. I tried talking to her in my head, trying to reason with a ghost, but even the imagined her didn't answer. She just smiled, distant, almost cruel in her happiness with Marcus. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I found the email. A routine message, supposedly mundane, but it contained a photo of them, smiling, her hand on her belly, his hand over hers. My chest tightened and I felt bile rise. I wanted to throw the laptop. I wanted to erase the image from existence, but I couldn't. I was trapped, watching the life I had hoped for being built without me. Somewhere between rage and grief, I started to notice the cracks in myself. I hated Marcus for existing. I hated him for loving her in ways I no longer could. But I also hated myself for staying quiet, for not seeing the signs sooner, for imagining a future that had never been mine to hold. And then, almost accidentally, a shift began. I realized the quiet pain could be my teacher. It could force me to understand something I hadn't before, about love, about desire, about attachment. I started writing again, late at night, pouring the ache into words, letting the letters carry the weight I couldn't. The words didn't fix me, but they didn't leave me broken either. The turning point came unexpectedly. I was at the grocery store, late, picking up milk and eggs, still in the habit of thinking about her, when I saw them. Marcus and Anna, walking down the aisle, smiling, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They didn't see me. They couldn't. I watched from behind the shelves, the fluorescent lights harsh on their faces, the quiet hum of the store wrapping around us all. And then she looked up, our eyes met for a fleeting second. No words, no recognition beyond that, just a flash of something she had once held for me, warmth, maybe familiarity, and then it was gone. She smiled at him and my chest felt like it had been hollowed out again. I walked away before she could see me, my legs heavy, my hands trembling. The city outside felt both alien and intimate, the neon lights reflecting off wet pavement, mocking me with their brightness. I realized then I couldn't control her. I couldn't reclaim what was lost, but I could reclaim myself. The first real step was small, a decision not to break down in front of anyone, a decision not to call her, not to text. Not to beg. Marcus would have her. That was a fact I couldn't undo, but I could survive it. Survival became a quiet rebellion. I started walking at dawn, feeling the chill of morning on my skin, letting it remind me that life continued. I started cooking again, eating slowly, savoring flavors I had ignored in grief. I started sleeping sometimes, if only for a few hours, letting the darkness carry away some of the weight, and yet the shadow of him lingered. Marcus. Everywhere, every interaction, every mutual friend's comment, every trace of her joy. I hated him. I wanted to confront him, but I didn't. There was something in me that recognized he was part of a world I had lost. A world that had nothing to do with me anymore. Then one evening, just as the sun was bleeding through the clouds, my phone buzzed. A name flashed on the screen, not hers, not Marcus's. A stranger unknown sending a single message. I know what you saw, meet me, 7 p.m., Cafe Luma, alone. I stared at it for a long time. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of the city outside, the faint ticking of the clock, everything seemed to pause. A strange mixture of fear and anticipation twisted in my gut. Who was this? What could they possibly know? I didn't reply, I didn't move, but I felt it, the pull, the first stirrings of something I hadn't felt in weeks. A pulse of curiosity, a flicker of courage. And as the rain started again, heavier this time, pattering against the window in relentless rhythm, I realized the story wasn't over. Not yet. The first time I saw her again, it was raining. Not the gentle drizzle that had marked our first fight, but a relentless, drumming storm, the kind that erases everything but itself. I was sitting at the kitchen table, mug in hand, staring at the streaks on the window. The apartment had begun to feel familiar in its emptiness, a strange comfort in the absence of chaos. And then the door creaked. Anna stood there, soaked, hair plastered to her face, mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile in a way that made my chest tighten. For a long moment we just stared at each other, rain dripping onto the floor, silence stretching like a taut wire. Daniel, her voice was almost a whisper, swallowed by the storm. I didn't move, I didn't speak. I just watched, drinking in the sight of her, the same face that had betrayed me, the same body that had shared a life with me, now trembling with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt maybe, or fear. I didn't mean I never wanted, she faltered, unable to finish the sentence. Words were useless, she knew that. I finally spoke, voice low, restrained. Why are you here? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I couldn't stay away, I needed to see you, to explain. I laughed, bitter and hollow, shaking my head. Explain, Anna, what is there to explain? You chose him, Marcus. You chose everything except me. She flinched at my words but didn't turn away. I know, and I'm sorry. I was selfish, scared. I thought I was doing the right thing for her, for us. For us, my voice cracked. There is no us anymore. Not the way I knew it, not the way it mattered. The apartment was quiet except for the rain. The storm pressed against the windows like a living thing, its rhythm echoing the pounding in my chest. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her, to demand answers, but I didn't, because something inside me had learned restraint. Something inside me had learned that love doesn't always mean forgiveness. She moved closer, her wet hair brushing my arm. Please let me stay, just for tonight. I need to make things right, or at least try. I studied her, the vulnerability, the raw, unpolished remorse. The way she avoided looking directly at me, as if afraid I'd crumble at the sight of her. My hands curled around the mug, knuckles white. You can stay, but just for tonight. My voice was quieter than I expected, almost gentle. She nodded, and we moved through the apartment like strangers who shared everything. The air was thick with unsaid words, the rain a constant backdrop to our fragile reunion. We ate in silence. Every bite of food tasted heavy with memory. The clink of cutlery against plates sounded too loud in the tense quiet. Occasionally she glanced at me, eyes pleading, searching for a crack in the armor I had built. I gave her none. After dinner we sat on the couch, close but not touching. I could feel the storm outside, feel the pulse of rain against the roof, and I imagined it as her heartbeat, rapid, uncertain, full of regret. I think about him, she admitted softly, all the time, and I hate myself for it. I love you, Daniel, I do, but her voice trailed, breaking. But you chose him, I said quietly, not a question, just a statement. She nodded. I thought I was doing the right thing, for the baby, for everyone. I didn't realize I was destroying you. I didn't see the cost. The cost, that word hit me harder than any slap, any scream. The cost was everything I had invested in us, in love, in trust. The cost was nights spent hoping she'd come back, mornings waking up to emptiness. The cost was Marcus, holding what should have been mine. I can't fix that, I said, voice low. You can't just come back and ask me to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not asking you to pretend, she said, tears slipping freely down her cheeks now. I need to be near you. To feel your presence, I don't know how to live with myself if I don't try. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to reach out and hold her, to reassure her, to say that everything would be okay. But the weight of betrayal sat between us like a wall, solid, unmovable. We didn't speak for a long time. The rain fell. My mind wandered to Marcus, to the future I had lost, to the life I would never have. And yet, despite it all, there was a flicker, a memory of laughter, of soft kisses, of long, quiet nights when everything had felt infinite. Finally, she leaned her head against the couch, close but not touching me. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered. "I don't know if we can or if we should." "Maybe we shouldn't," I said softly, almost to myself. "But tonight you can stay. That's all I can offer." Her hand hovered near mine, trembling, but she didn't reach, and I didn't either. We existed in a fragile truce, bound not by trust but by memory, by love. By something that refused to die completely, even as it refused to live fully. Outside, the storm began to ease. The rain softened, pattering lightly against the windows like hesitant footsteps. And in the quiet aftermath, I realized something. Love and betrayal could coexist. Desire and restraint could coexist. And sometimes, the act of letting someone in, even just for a night, was enough. But I also knew this: tomorrow, everything could change. And in that moment, with her eyes closed, hands trembling at her sides, I understood that tonight was borrowed. Fragile, uncertain. The dawn would come, and with it, reality. Morning came soft and gray, sunlight spilling through half-drawn curtains. The apartment smelled faintly of rain and coffee, traces of the night before lingering in corners, in the air. Anna was still asleep on the couch, her hair damp from yesterday's storm, the rise and fall of her chest slow and fragile. I watched her for a long moment, my hands wrapped around a mug I didn't really feel. Every detail was etched in my memory: the way her lashes rested against her cheeks, the gentle curve of her jaw, the tremor of her lips even in sleep. It should have hurt more, but somehow it didn't, not in the way it used to. I stood, careful not to wake her. There was a quietness between us now, a fragile truce. Last night had been a bridge, not a repair. I didn't need her to explain. I didn't need her to apologize again. The storm had passed. What remained was silence, steady and unyielding, and in that silence a strange clarity settled over me. I went to the bedroom and packed a small bag, not hers, not mine, but my own. Clothes, notebooks, a few personal things I had neglected in grief. I didn't plan to leave forever, but I needed space, distance, perspective, a reminder that life continued beyond betrayal, beyond heartbreak. When I returned, she was awake, eyes red-rimmed, fragile, aware. She didn't speak. I offered a small nod. She returned it. The quiet between us was no longer suffocating. It was gentle, even comforting. I should go," I said finally. The words felt strange, weightless, and heavy at the same time. She nodded, eyes brimming. "Yeah, I understand." There was no bitterness in her gaze, no pleading, just regret, just acknowledgement, and that, oddly, was enough. We walked to the door together, silent. The city outside was muted, gray and soft after the storm. The streets glistened, reflecting streetlights and puddles, a world washed clean. I realized then that life didn't stop for grief, didn't stop for betrayal. It moved, and we could either move with it or be left behind. I opened the door. The air smelled of wet asphalt and renewal. She paused. I could see the hesitation in her stance, a moment suspended in time. "I hope she has the life you wanted for her," I said softly, not angry, not bitter, honest. She swallowed, voice breaking slightly. "I hope you find happiness too." And then she was gone. The apartment felt emptier than before, yet lighter. I walked to the window, watching her retreat down the street, coat clinging to her damp frame, hair plastered, head down. The rain had stopped, only the faint drizzle remained, soft and quiet. I breathed slowly. The weight of months of grief and longing pressed down on my chest and then lifted just a little. There was sadness, yes, always sadness. But there was also space, space to heal, to think, to breathe. I returned to the couch and sat, picked up my mug, drank. The taste of coffee was bitter and grounding. I let my mind wander, letting memories surface, laughter, arguments, quiet nights, the echo of her presence. And then gently I let them go. Love and pain, I realized, were not opposites. They were cohabitants of the same room. They could exist together without destroying everything else. And sometimes the act of letting go was not about forgetting or forgiving. It was about surviving, living, and loving yourself enough to step forward even as the heart aches. I glanced at the window again. Sunlight was breaking through clouds, casting soft beams across the apartment floor. I let my hand rest on the windowsill, fingers brushing against the cold glass. A quiet smile tugged at the corner of my lips, not happiness, not joy. But peace. She left twice, once with him, and once when I finally let her go. And for the first time in months, I felt the possibility of tomorrow. The city hummed outside, relentless, steady. Life continued, and so would I.